In this video, we're briefly going to go through how to adapt the default VR motion controller template so you can create more specific interactions with the hand controllers. Here I have the scene in Unreal version 4.21. I've already added a bunch of materials and made things look pretty good with Substance. And I've also dragged in the, I don't know why it's white, the VR motion controller template. I also have a nav mesh here somewhere. If we open up the motion controller pawn here, you'll notice that everything is right, everything's as it is by default. So we have the event begin play, and then it's setting the player height, and then it's also spawning both motion controllers. The way this works, as soon as gameplay starts, we're going to spawn the left controller, and then we're going to spawn the right controller, and then attach those to the VR origin. Here's all we have in this blueprint. It's just the default scene root with the VR origin and then the camera. There are no controllers here at all. Those are spawned, it's these blueprints right here. So when that's spawned, you get this hand that's all grabby, and you get the arrow for teleporting, all that stuff. So if we were to play this in editor, I'm using a HTC Vive right now. You can see both controllers right here. And if I grab this one, I can, lose tracking. I can use the trigger and it'll grab. If there were selectable objects, I could actually grab them, move them around, do whatever I want. So in our situation, we actually don't want to use both hands. Let's say you're making a program where you want your left hand to actually be something like a phone, something that you can just interact with, and then you want to be able to input commands to it instead of using the hand controller at all. Excuse me, instead of using the hand model at all. So first things first, I'm going to Alt left click this left controller. I'm left-handed. I want that device in my left hand. So I'm just going to compile, save, and if we were to play an editor right now, we would see the right hand show up, but the left hand would not be there. I've also gone ahead and added, let's see, a blueprint for a phone, a static mesh for a phone. This is just a cheap 3D model I found on TurboSquid. It didn't look nearly this nice. I just added a black plastic and then this weird green shiny metal on the back of it. So that's all we got there. Thank you. And then I've also added just a basic widget. This is a phone. If you wanted to use this, I'll show you how to integrate that too. But I'd prefer not to because widgets are the worst. So first we got to make sure that this is unchecked here. And what we're actually going to do is, we know that in our program that we're going to use, whether it's Vive, Oculus, Windows Mixed Reality, we know that the user is going to have their hand controllers. This template is really great because it'll look to see if hand controllers can be tracked, and if they can be, then it'll spawn them. But we're just going to adapt this so we can spawn it knowing 100% of the time it will be there. So first, we're going to add a component to the motion controller pawn. This is called motion controller, and this is a magical little component that really just gets the control of Vive Tracker, Vive Controller, Oculus, Windows Mixed Reality, whatever, even Oculus Go, and so on. And it outputs the position and rotation every frame. So here, we're going to make sure that this is set to left. And if we wanted to actually see it in real time, we could spawn the device for it as well to match up. Let's go ahead, compile, save, and play in editor, play in VR so you can see it. So I have a headset and I have a controller right here. Yep, motion controller is working. Let's open that back up. And we don't want to see that model, so let's uncheck that now that we know it works. Compile, save again, and we're going to add another component. This is going to be a static mesh, and let's call this sm_phone. And go up here to where I added my phone and search for that, sm phone. And great. So now if we compile and save, we're going to notice that the issue now is that it is not aligned the way that I want it to be. I'm holding the controller straight up in front of, there you go, so you can see it, straight up in front of the Vive, and it's the incorrect rotation, so I need to rotate it 90 degrees that way, 90 that way, and then, yeah, that should be it. And get out of there. Open that back up. So we wanted to rotate this way, and then this way. And now if we were to play an editor, we'd see it exactly the orientation that I would prefer it to be at. So let's say that in VR you want to actually use the thumb pad on the Vive. There's also one for Samsung Odyssey, the Dell, all those headsets. Oculus has one too. Let's say you want to push up, left, down, or right, and then see some sort of reaction that would happen there. What we could do at this point would be add component and use a widget. And if we made a widget, we could, widget screen is the one I made before. You could use that and align it to that device and feed inputs and changes to it from this blueprint. I would rather do it a different way. I'd like to keep everything within this motion controller pawn, just because I feel like I have more control over it that way. Again, widgets might be the better way to go about this, but I feel like for now I'd rather not, due to the complexity of what we're going to be making. So first things first, we're going to make a text box, and this is going to be parented to the SM phone. And let's rotate that. There we go. Make it like 5 world size. Great. Center everything. Text center. And let's move it. Let's move it like right in the middle of the phone. Perfect. Cool. Maybe it would be up here. So there's our text, maybe a bit smaller. This is going to get way too big, too quick. So next, reselect, thank you, Adobe. Reselect your SM phone, make sure we're still recording. And we're going to add a sphere. And let's call this button top. And our sphere is way too big right now. We're going to make it 0.02 scale. There we go. And let's move this just right here below the text. And then I'm going to right click and duplicate this. I can call this button bottom. Yeah. Button bottom, move that down here. And duplicate top again. Let's call this button left. Right here. Duplicate that. Button right. Okay. So at this point, compile save, we should have 4 buttons. Move that there. 4 buttons and the text box all parented to the phone, which is itself a child of the motion controller. So now, if we play, I have my headset, I have my controller, I see text, I see 4 buttons, perfect. Next up, let's make these actually interactive. So I pulled up this handy chart of all the Vive controller inputs that we have in Unreal. So you can actually map the X and the Y of the thumbstick for the Vive. I'm not sure how it works with the other headsets, so we're going to avoid that. I just want to push up, down, left, and right, and use those for the inputs. So top button is face button 4, left is... So up is 1, left is 4, down is 3, right is 2. I'm not going to remember that. We're going to go to our event graph in our motion controller pawn. And next we want to add, let's right click up here and do face button L. Top trackpad up is face button 1. So we're going to do this one. Make sure this is L for the left hand controller. Do motion controller face button. Left is 4. Motion controller left face. Down is 3. And then motion controller face. Right is 2. Cool. Okay. I'm not going to remember that. Let's make this a little bit less abstract for ourselves. So we're going to make a custom event, and we're going to say top pushed. We're going to make custom left. Sorry, mechanical keyboard. So top is top pushed. We're going to push top pushed when face button 1 is hit. Is that correct? Yes. When face button 4 is hit, we're going to do left pushed. And when 3 is hit, we're going to do down pushed. And when 2 is hit, we're going to do right pushed. So right now, if we had the left-hand controller hit the top button, this event would fire. Left would fire this one, down would fire this one, right would fire this one. Why did I make custom events for this? Mostly just to keep things nice and neat. If we wanted to do any like Boolean gates down the line, we might want to interject those somewhere before we actually fire the events themselves. And also, these don't indicate to me which direction. I guess I could do top, right, down, left, and then whatever. It's just easier for me to understand this way. So let's say when top button is pushed, we're going to make the button top turn a color. And we could also do like an event dispatcher to the level blueprint at that point, and make the next step in our interaction occur at that point. But let's just keep it simple for now. So we're going to say M button green. And let's make this just a quick green color. Thanks, Adobe. Okay, so we have that. Let's open up that motion controller pod again. When top is pushed, let's drag out this button top and do set material and change that to button green. And then let's copy that node 4 times and plug these into their respective custom events. And then set these so top and then left and then bottom and then right. If I wasn't just in a hurry, I'd clean all this up, but whatever. So right now, let's head into VR and test this. So we have our controller, we have our phone. If we do top, left, down, right, perfect. That's all working. Buttons are hitting correctly. What we could do is we could set it so when top is hit, we could set all the other objects to be red or not green, rather, and so on and so forth. So you're only selecting one at a given time. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Next, what I want to do is I want to actually like input text to the screen and maybe make it change every like 5-10 seconds or something, just so we get some sort of narrative that's going on. So let's pop open that motion controller blueprint again. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to fire the text update in a custom event. Love custom events. Yes, I do. So let's call this update. Update text box. Okay. Let's we're going to use an integer to fire this text. So I want basically 5 lines of text, and I want the first one to fire, and then after that, the second one's going to be able to fire, third, fourth, fifth, so on. I'm going to use the same workflow that I use for different training applications and for simulations where you want one thing to happen right after another. You want like a procedure-based workflow. This is a really powerful method for going about this, and hopefully you'll be able to adapt it to other projects in the future. So I'm going to make a new variable here. We're going to call this step integer. By default, it's a Boolean variable. We're going to want to change that to an integer. What is an integer, Steve, and how is it different from a float? So a float is also just a number. If we compile, the float is anywhere from 0, well, negative infinity to positive infinity. Integer, on the other hand, is only whole numbers. So we want step 1, step 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. We don't want to worry about like step 10.83974, so on. So by default, we want this to be 0. I'm going to drag this out here, and we're going to do get step integer. And if we drag out and do plus plus, we're going to do increment integer. What this does is it takes that value, adds 1, and adds that to the output. Easy enough. And it's actually setting the integer each time. So it's going to take, every time we fire this event, we're going to take step integer. By default, it's 0. Add 1 to it. So then it sets it to 1. So then the next time we go through it, it's going to be 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, and so on and so forth. But we're going to use one of my favorite notes, drag out from the integer out of that increment, and we're going to search for switch on int. And the way this works is, plug that in as well, or it's not going to work. We can add pins to the output, and these correlate to the value of the integer that is the input. So by default, it's going to go 0, but every time we go through this for the first time, it's only going to be 1. So we want to start here, and then we'll add text, 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 and so on. Easy enough. I'm going to move this up a bit out of the way. Let's take our text render, make a reference to it, and let's do set text, and plug this into the 1 value. And let's do another, plug it into the 2. Copy both of those, duplicate into 3 and 4. Make sure that's recording. Good. Set the target for all of these text renders to be the same object, otherwise it's not going to work. And then we want to say what the text is. So drag out from the first value, and we're going to do a make literal text. And we can put whatever we want here. Okay, and duplicate that and put something else in the second value. Let's do a third one. And whatever for the fourth. Great. So how are we going to actually fire this event? Right now it's set up, working and everything. We fire it the first time, we're going to get the first value, second time, and so forth. How about we fire this every time we push one of these buttons? Something we might want to add to make this more user-friendly might be like a gate. So as soon as the text changes, maybe like set a gate for like 5 to 10 seconds or something, where you can push all you want, but nothing's going to happen unless that Boolean is set up appropriately. So maybe we'll do that after this, but let's get this first step out of the way. So, man, I'm just not doing well with this. Good enough. Okay, so when we do top pushed, we want to, out from that, do a update text box. And for that matter, we want to fire this every single time that we hit one of these buttons successfully. So now if I go ahead, compile, save, let's see this in the headset. So let's play an editor and test this. And you can see I have my right hand here, but I have my left hand. If we hold this up, hit a button, whatever we want here, something else, a third one, and whatever. Now if I were to keep pushing, it's going to keep adding integer values, but we only had 4 lines of text there. So nothing's actually gonna change in that text box there. Cool, so that's working. At this point, we could call it done and move on to more advanced functionality. That's all working. But let's make this a little bit more advanced. So let's say we what could we do? We could make it so we have a flip-flop here, so it's going to go from green to something else, and only one is going to be green at any given time. Yeah, let's try that. So let's yeah, okay. So let's do a let's duplicate this green material. Just highlighted it in the content browser. Let's call this button neutral. Pop that open. Instead of green, let's make it like a beautiful color. You'd think I was an artist, but I'm not. So we're going to set this so when you hit it, everything else is going to turn that default. I just got to change that now or it's going to bother me. Every time you hit it, the single button will turn green, all the other buttons will turn white. That way only one will be turned on at any given time. So after our set material for the button green, let's duplicate this and put this here. Let's just Alt left click to break all of these. And we're going to change this button green to button neutral. And we're going to duplicate all of these, and I'm just going to line them up a little bit, clean it up a bit. Left, bottom, right. I'm going to skip ahead so you don't have to watch the rest here. Okay, so those are all set. So for each of these events, it's going to turn off the other buttons, make them a neutral material. And let's set these up. Cool. So now when we play, we should get some cleaner results here. Grab my controller. So top one, left one, down, right. And we can keep going. It's going to keep adding those integers, but it doesn't matter. We're not doing anything with them. What we could do, you could try to set this up so when you hit top pushed, it fires a different switch on int that's going to yield a different set of results. So maybe like the top pushed is like a affirmative response, down push is a negative response, left is sarcastic, right would be aggressive, something like that. So then you could have like 4 different switch on int categories and find the text box that you're going to use based on other values than just a step integer. But I think at this point you should be equipped to tackle that. But please let me know either through email or a comment below if you have any issues. Ignore that. If you have any questions, issues, something you'd like me to approach next. Thanks for watching.